Hi, I'm Nushin, your friend. I'm sharing my COVID battle with you. I want you to know that I contact traced, and I think I inherited COVID on the 19th of August. At that time, I went to visit my sister without her permission, and I didn't go in the house, but she had COVID, and I just wanted to see her. So, and that same day, my mom had pneumonia and she was COVID negative. I saw her for a moment just to grab a bag from her. My symptoms started approximately 48 hours after. I would say on the 21st was the first time I experienced shortness of breath. Sorry. Anyway, I went to urgent care on the 23rd. The 23rd, my COVID test came negative, but I definitely had pneumonia, so they prescribed me Z-Pak. Before I move on, I need you to know that I have systemic lupus, so I'm kind of familiar with my body, and I know when I'm not feeling well. This was not lupus. This was an angry, furious, and fast disease. Whatever it was taking over my body very quickly. On that day, they gave me Z-Pak. I knew I had COVID, even though my COVID came negative. They sent it out for antigen and they did a rapid. They both came negative. So I went home, I divided the 5-day Z-Pak, and I took it in 2 days, because if this thing was growing in me this fast, Z-Pak was gonna be a child's play. Then I started feeling worse. I developed fever. My spine was hurting. My entire spine was hurting. And then on the 24th, my blood pressure and my heart rate was affected. My blood pressure was around 200 over 120. My heart rate at rest had become around 100. I went back to urgent care and they said COVID negative. And they said pneumonia is gone. At that point, I knew I could not rely on the doctors, because they were just as dumbfounded as I was. Just to give you a quick history about my education. I'm a non-practicing nurse and I have a background in forensic science. As soon as I got sick, my daughter got sick on the 24th. She called me from school saying, "Mommy, come pick me up. I'm feeling very bad." I went in, the nurse said, "Oh, she just wants to skip school. There's nothing wrong with her." I took my daughter to urgent care. Everything normal and no COVID. I just knew both my daughter and I had COVID. I knew it. It was growing too fast. I took her to emergency room. They did a test on her. It took them a couple minutes. The doctor came back and she said she has COVID. At that point, I went home. I started researching on doxycycline. And the reason why on doxycycline, because I figure our lungs, they're made of epithelial cells, even though different cells than our skin. But my daughter has been taking doxycycline for acne. So what the hell do I have to lose? So I started giving her 200 milligram of doxycycline, 10 milligram of prednisone. I started giving myself 200 milligram of doxycycline, but because I have systemic lupus, I give myself 30 milligram of prednisone to diminish the flare-up inflammatory response that was going on. So, and I also gave my daughter albuterol inhaler, 2 puffs in morning, 2 puffs at night, but none to me. So my symptoms started evolving. It's amazing. I had pneumonia before I had a cough. Then I had a cough, and my lungs felt like they were filling up with glue, literally super glue. And at that point, I was going through all the things I had studied in physics and chemistry. And I figured if something is developing in my lungs and it's so heavy, and gravity is helping it to stick to me, I should undo it. I started doing yoga. I started doing that. I don't know what you call it, downward dog, I think it is called. I started doing that. And every time I would breathe, instead of exhaling, I would cough it out. And that helped a lot, immensely, to loosen up phlegm. And I was coughing like I am today because I had not been able to cough. It was just a dry hack, like like that. Hold on one second. So, anyway, I lost my sense of smell and taste soon after. My daughter, I noticed the pattern that was setting in. She was losing, or she was experiencing what I had experienced. It would take her 24 hours after me. So let's say I lost my sense of smell and taste within 4 days, 5 days. She lost it on the 6th day. Now, one thing that was different about hers was fever. She continued to have fever. I, on the other hand, maintained 97. Always 97. One thing I noticed about COVID and the diagnostic test or the triage vitals they do, which I absolutely believe is ludicrous, is that they do the pulse ox in the triage and the patient is sitting down. Of course, the pulse ox is going to be 97, 98, 95. You get that patient walking 100 feet and do the pulse ox, it's going to drop to 80 or 86. Well, that was the true case for my daughter and I. We both maintained extremely good pulse ox in any emergency room we went. But when I would go home and I would say, do a couple knee lifts for me, stationary knee lifts, or I would do it, our pulse ox would drop by 10 points. I bought a nebulizer and I had albuterol treatments, so I made a big mistake. One thing I forgot about COVID, excuse me. One thing I forgot about COVID was that aerosol droplets and pneumonia. I made a big mistake. That was a bad mistake. I got a face mask inhaler, and for my by the way, that's another thing that has happened to me from COVID. my thoughts. I lose them quickly. For the nebulizer, I put the nebulizer on, put a mask. Biggest mistake of my life. The mist from the nebulizer congested my lungs and my sinus cavity. The virus became more angry. I believe I almost died that night. It took a lot of coughing, and at times I was gagged and I couldn't breathe. At that night, I know I could only rely on myself and no doctor, because at that point, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I had gone to emergency room 4 times. They had sent me home because the darn pulse ox was 97 and I had no fever. Even though I was choking and gagging, they kept sending me home. Also, because my COVID kept coming back negative. I guess at that point I hadn't built enough antigen, COVID antigen in my blood to show, to prove I had COVID. But my symptoms had begun a while back. At this point, maybe 7 days. Yeah, 7 days. So finally, on the 27th of August, I went to emergency room. And I said, I know I have COVID, test me again. They tested me, came back positive. So the moral of the story is this: while I was self-administering all this concoction, I was fighting a war that it had begun, but nobody besides me knew about it. Also, the moral of the story is, use your common sense. At this point in time, doctors don't know anything. If you know your body, you treat it. In my opinion, I know there is research on doxycycline done, and yes, look it up, doxycycline and COVID pneumonia, which is exactly what I have. But for some odd reason, the test never picked up my disease until days or a week after I had developed pneumonia. Prednisone, they're not so happy about using it with COVID. However, because I know I have an autoimmune disease, and I know in my daughter, because she's asthmatic, prednisone saved us. Doxycycline, I think it reduced the amount of infection that could be developing in both of our lungs. I have used doxycycline 7 days now, and I have enough for the 2 of us for another 5. I know the usual regimen for doxycycline is 10 days, but again, we're using 10-day dosage for a disease that we know. I am not familiar with COVID, and frankly, I don't think anybody else is either. So since they are using us as guinea pigs, I'm using myself as a guinea pig, and let's see if this works or not. By the way, today is the first day I'm outside, and it's kind of hard for me to breathe. The atmospheric pressure is low, it's overcast, it's raining, so it's making breathing a bit difficult, but I had to record this for you. I'm your friend, I love you, and I hope all of you stay safe.